Hello there, Kenny Zook here. This is Halas Kool-Aid. Are you confused by Ryan Pace? What the heck is he doing this year? Is he crazy? Is he stupid? I understand him. Yes, that might be because I've had my share of Halas Kool-Aid, but I understand him. You want to know what he's thinking? You see, Ryan Pace evaluates talent differently than you do, and way differently than I do, because I mostly just look at what Pace did and try to make sense out of it. The vast majority of fans look at football in an object-oriented way. The quarterback is the same quarterback no matter where you stick him, no matter how you shake him. But if you want to understand why Pace does the crazy things you see, you have to take a more process-oriented approach. You see, I figure that Ryan Pace is making a 7-digit salary. So when I hear someone say, "Well, does Pace think?" insert moronic sounding logic here, I always think, well, no, he's probably not that stupid. No. It is the NFL, so it's not impossible for a crazy fool to be making multi-million-dollar decisions. That happens. But Pace has a pretty good reputation amongst his peers, as well as his bosses and their peers. He was very involved in helping build some pretty impressive Saints teams. So rather than railing about what an imbecile a guy seems to be, I remind myself that he's a professional, making just barely 2 digits more than my career best. He has access to film and several additional professional evaluations of that film, plus all those opinions come from people with the playbook on their desk or in their lab. So they know exactly who was right, wrong, or marginal on every single play, not just the miscues, all of it. Maybe I should try and figure out what Pace's reasoning really was. What dots did he connect from all those professional evaluations? See, the first thing to try to grasp about Ryan Pace is that he is not a metrics rule all kind of guy. That would be somebody more like Mike Mayock at the apex of evaluators who seem to think that combining the best metrics money can buy on a roster with an X and O genius slash motivational speaker is a guarantee of success. How's that working out? More to come, I'm sure. Ryan Pace, anyway, on the other hand, is a football family builder. Now, for some of you, the light just came on, and this is going to start getting easy. That one phrase explains why Pace is a sucker for a cool story, like Mitchell Trubisky keeping the secret meeting secret by booking a reservation for James McMahon, or a sob story like Kevin White. Sometimes it pays off well, like with Kyle Fuller. Sometimes it flops, like trying to wish Leonard Floyd into being an edge rusher. In my opinion, when they saw how good he was in coverage and against the run, they should have tried to make Leonard Floyd the highest paid strong safety in the history of the league, or at least posed that idea in public. Anyway, no telling if Floyd would have held out for edge rusher money anyway, but I'm digressing. The next most important thing to understand about Ryan Pace is that he's deeply married to the mentor concept. This is a highly logical extension of the football family mindset. It is also a place where some successes go completely unnoticed, like the roundly criticized signing of Quentin Demps, the aging veteran who beat slumping Adrian Amos out of his job, thus jolting Amos out of his performance slump just in time to return to top form when Demps broke his arm. Pace is all about a young team with just the right veterans to build the team culture he covets. See, that bit will help you a lot with some of this offseason signings, if you didn't see that taste of Pace's before. Ted Ginn and Darnell Mooney, Jimmy Graham and Cole Kmet. And now that I've mentioned Graham, by the way, I need to jump on something that everybody is selling short about my man Jimmy. Everybody wants to badmouth Jimmy Graham because his stats in Green Bay were not at all Jimmy Graham-like. But the Packers don't feature tight ends much. I went through Green Bay's receiving stats for the last 10 years, and guess what? That's just about exactly how far you've got to go to find a Packers tight end with production like Jimmy Graham had. Jimmy Graham reignited the Packers tight end room to levels not seen since Jermichael Finley in 2011 and 2012. In fact, Graham was the only tight end in the decade to finish a season as high as second on the Packers in receiving yards. Finley's best was third. In 2019, in a new offense where Rodgers' numbers were down across the board, Graham's yards also went down, but his yards per catch stayed over 11, and his yards per target actually went up. Now that's not digressing. I'm trying to help you understand Ryan Pace here. And I'm telling you, these are the things he sees. Not just that Graham still has plenty of great snaps left, but that physically he's the same prototype as the highly polished for a rookie, Cole Kmet. More than that, especially because of Pace and Graham's history and Pace's mindset, I think Pace looks at Graham's character and believes that the Bears will see Jimmy Graham, Cole Kmet, and Demetrius Harris openly competing for who blocks the best come next season. Now, the next most important consideration when trying to make sense of Ryan Pace is that he's a craftsman. No single move stands alone. You must consider everything in the big picture context first. Full disclosure, once again, a little Halas Kool-Aid will be a big help in that regard, but you can get there just by observing the big picture. Let's look at everything Pace and Nagy did with the offense this offseason. They retired right guard Kyle Long, actually during the season, and brought in a guy who had penalty problems at right tackle to replace him, along with the usual assortment of exciting development projects. Speaking of which, by the way, if you are not actively rooting for Pig Simmons, from the same school that gave us Richard Dent, to develop into a guard tackle of the future, I challenge your bare familyness. Asked about his influential coaches in his life, Pig Simmons mentioned his college coach who had visited his high school and said Pig should ought to play offensive tackle because of his long arms, and said, quote, "So I started pancaking guys and he gave me a scholarship." That would be influential, and that, my friends, is a bear named Pig. Root for him. Anyway, behind the O-line, they filled the top 3 spots in the tight end room, and they extended J.P. Holmes. They fired 3 coaches and lost consultant Brad Childress. They hired 4 coaches, all obviously aimed at taking a different approach with the run game, especially the Andy Reid version of Harry Hiestand, Juan Castillo, and the O-line coach turned tight end coach, Clancy Barone, who knows as well as anybody that good run blocking by the tight ends is the key to play action in this type of offense. Everybody wants to say Pace and Nagy are blind, but they can't see the problem slapping them in the face. But then, everybody seems to be so in love with receiving metrics that they forget that the tight end has always been a major part of the run game. That is doubly true in an Andy Reid-style offense. If the tight ends are ineffective run blockers, the play action pass becomes a joke, which nobody has to come up to support. If you don't have any tight ends who are effective, 2 tight end sets are an even bigger joke. So while everybody moans and wails about how bad the tackles are, and how Pace and Nagy ignored that, the Bears go out and replace the 3 worst run blockers: injured Trey Burton, a great run blocker when he's healthy; injured Adam Shaheen, an improving run blocker when he's healthy; and Ben Broniker. Ended up not healthy. I don't even remember what he was playing like. Shaheen and Broniker are still on the roster, but clearly outclassed by the new arrivals. Yes, the whole line was awful last season, early in the season. Yes, simplification helped them recover a bit later in the season, some more than others. But the overcomplication Coach Nagy and Tariq Cohen mentioned in both of their OTA pressers can't possibly have been anything other than the coaching staff's handling of the realization that they had installed an Andy Reid-style offense and didn't have any tight ends. The overinstall Nagy bragged about in training camp as Mitchell Trubisky's only problem, the traditional installation of a tight end-centric playbook, followed by the installation of what must have been a whole other playbook to compensate for the distinct lack of tight ends. This wholesale coaching change, in lieu of a massive personnel swap on the offensive line, is smoking gun evidence to support that idea. That's exactly what Ryan Pace thought. But as long as people are content to assume that the most reasonable explanation for 5 offensive linemen and 3 or more tight ends to simultaneously become inept and wimpy blockers, only to show improvement later in the season. The best explanation for all of that is none of them were all that good to start with. 2018 was a fluke, and they've all now finally sunk to their natural level. Well, those folks are going to continue to miss out, more or less completely, on Pace's obvious thought process. That when 8 guys all walk off the same cliff at the same time, that cliff was a coaching mistake, not individual talent fall off, not 8 guys, not all at once. The other big picture thinking so many are missing relates to the defense. And the question so rarely asked is, just how good does this offense even need to be? I see people dismissing Jimmy Graham and Ted Ginn, saying they're too old to put up career best numbers. Now, I'd love to argue against that as a foolish assumption, because I think it could happen, but I don't care. I'm going to go the much more sensible route. I'm going to say, why care? They don't need to put up huge fantasy numbers to have a huge impact on this team. If both Graham and Ginn can average 3.5 catches per game and maintain a nice high yards per catch and yards per target, they open up the offense. 600 yards for Graham would be more than the entire 2019 tight end room combined, and more than Trey Burton in 2018, his career year. 600 for Ginn would be almost twice the 353 from a concussed Taylor Gabriel last year. That's probably what TG himself would have got without the concussion. Pace pays attention to things like how Ted Ginn's fall off in fantasy numbers corresponded with Michael Thomas's rise. But Pace knows that 2 or 3 catches a game for Ginn, Graham, Harris, maybe 1 or 2 for Kmet, will open up a lot of holes for David Montgomery, on top of the couple thousand yards of raw offense that would produce on the season. Are Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy right? Is this just barely good enough offense, all they need to advance to the next level? Well, gee, howdy, I hope so. I mean, they are the Bears, so there's apparently not too many plans so good they can't crash them with bad luck or more bad choices. On the other hand, Pat Mahomes had Travis Kelce, even when Pat was on the bench with Alex Smith's clipboard. That was back when Trubisky was filling in for a shell-shocked Mike Glennon and watching his top tight end, Zach Miller, get crunched, leaving next best Deion Sims, who got less yards, less receptions, and less targets in 14 games than Miller got in 8. Then in 2018, Trubisky went to the playoffs with a healthy Trey Burton. Then in 2019, he went to hell in a handbasket with nowhere close to healthy Trey Burton and the coaching staff's overreaction to Burton's and Adam Shaheem's demise. This year will be the first time we've seen Mitchell Trubisky with 2 capable veteran tight ends, much less with a chance of the occasional flash from a hot rookie in the tight end group. If it works, it won't be the miracle people describe it as. It will be the logical conclusion of a well-thought and well-executed plan. If they fail, well, then the wait begins for the regime change to the next blithering moron hired to embarrass the franchise and an all-new flavor of Halas Kool-Aid. Right after they finish pumping the old batch of Halas Kool-Aid out of my stomach. Pass the Halas Kool-Aid. Bear down, Chicago Bears. You're going to see some amazing tight ends this year, and that will bring Mitchell Trubisky out of the dumps. You heard it here.